Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our study. Now, during the last three lectures, we have examined the philosophy of consumption from the perspective of Chinese traditional culture. Now, from today, we're going to explore the other side of our economic coin, namely production. Okay. Now, from the previous lectures, we know that consumption is more about the teaching on the personal level, if you remember. So, an appropriate consumption pattern is that is, in line with the principle of the system of rights, can help the individual, from the highest class to the common people, to cultivate personal morality and harness ethical conduct. Production, on the other hand, is mostly about government regulation, policy design, and macroeconomic management. But let's bear in mind that the value of traditional Chinese culture and philosophy is about developing human nature. So its aim is to achieve social harmony through harnessing human mind. So for this reason, as we will see during this course, the teaching of production is entirely based on various versions of the following question, namely, what is human nature? Or what drives social harmony? So these two questions are very fundamental. They're so fundamental that they're behind many important production-related issues. For example, how to produce, how much to produce, when to produce, and what to produce. Okay, so now let's begin our study by first exploring the overall factors of production. Okay, factors of production. Now, in modern economics, factors of production include things like labor, land, capital, and enterprise. So anybody with a little bit of a knowledge in economics should know this. So these are the input used in the production of goods and services. These also include any resource needed for the creation of a good and service. Now, we'll frame our study in a very similar way. So we'll be looking at labor, nature, and capital. So the first and foremost question is that what is binding all of these factors together? Why do they come together? This is the question that every king and past ruler would need to answer before managing the country. The chapter of the Great Learning in the Book of Rights provides the following principle. It says, the superior man must be careful about his virtue first. Having virtue, there will be the man. Having the man, there will be the land. Having the land, there will be the wealth. Having the wealth, there will be his use. So virtue is the root, and wealth is only its outcome. And you may recall this is in fact the one of the front page quote that we put on this website. The teaching of the traditional Chinese philosophy tells us that these factors of production are not independent, as you can see, and the binding agent is the virtue of the leader. So let's have a look. First of all, the leader must be a virtuous person. So he or she must understand the importance of benevolence and practice it up to the highest level, the highest standard. Among all the technical knowledge and credentials, virtue is the most important qualification for a leader. Now you might ask, why is virtue given such an important place? Well, simply because people naturally follow and support a man of virtue. Now, they may follow a man of wealth for a short while, but without virtue, the support will diminish. During the Zhou dynasty, the Zhou king was supported by all the peripheral feudal lords and noble families, but not because of his military power, but because of his moral influence. But later on, the Zhou family lost its supremacy also because of loss of virtue. So this is why the ancient sages summarized in the Great Learning, virtue comes first and man will follow. So the concept of man in this context is labor. So only with the support of the people can a country secure its land. And as you can see, without the land, there is no point to talk about production, right? Because production takes place on the land. So the point here is that land must be supported by the people. Otherwise, it won't do anything, even if it's there. So you may argue that, in modern society, much of the work takes place in a factory operated by robots, and there is a lot of value-adding work being done in a cyberspace, so the importance of land diminishes. And you may also argue that land is only important in agricultural economy. Well, this is only partially true. Only partially true. For example, Japan is the world's third largest economy, which is 2.87 times of that of Canadian economy, but the size of its land is 26 times smaller than that of Canada. So yes, it seems that land is not an issue anymore. But land we're talking about here is all-inclusive. Now, it not only includes the agricultural land or reservoir, but also laboratory, the tiny space under the microscope, and the vast and unmeasurable cyberspace, for example, the automated production line, the diameter of the fiber optic cable, if you like. So all the physical and non-physical space you can think of. But no matter what kind of space we refer to, it must be operated by people. Even the robots must be first programmed by human beings. So the precondition of the usefulness of the land is still the people. So the land can only be preserved with the support of the people. That's the idea. Now, with the people in place and the land secured, there is production of wealth. And wealth is referred to as capital, such as tools, machineries, buildings, and infrastructures, etc. Again, the capital can very well be small in size or even non-physical, including chemical ingredients, internet network, research output, databases, and knowledge. Now, as you can see, the principle of production is a general economic principle that applies to both the past and the present. It is also quite right, to divide the productive factors into three. The production process takes place with the right people and in the appropriate given space or land. So with the right production tool and capital, we're able to make things, make goods and services, and to satisfy consumption, and that would be the use of it. Well, when this paragraph was first written, this principle was originally applied to the ruler, but it can also be applied to a person, or individual person, or anybody. Taking businessman as an example. This person must possess some kind of virtue and personal quality first, either physical, mental, or moral. And this way, he can be supported by the people, such as employees, business partners, or financial providers and investors. So only with the right people in place, he can put the capital to work. So this is the general description of factors of production. Now, according to the order of written in a Great Learning, we'll discuss human being first and then the nature. Well, in fact, this order is very similar to the concept put forth by the American economist Henry George in the mid-19th century. He said, "It is not the increase of food that has caused this increase of men, but the increase of men that has brought about the increase of food. There is more food simply because there are more men." The Chinese scholars also think that men is the chief productive factor. And this is not only applied to labor-intensive industry or a primitive society where economic output largely depends on the number of farmers. Human capital is really important also to the modern society. I mean, one obvious example is the knowledge acquisition carried out by human. And meanwhile, human moral development and social harmony is also fundamental to sustainable economic prosperity. So without a deep understanding of human capital, there is very little ground to discuss other factors of production. And also, because economics is not a natural science, but a human science, we should care for the man first.